Welcome to Talks with Summer, seeing the world through the eyes of another. Today I have with me Ammie Kinsman. Welcome, Ammie. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am 40 years old, moved to DC 5 years ago, right before the pandemic. So that was an interesting time to make a large life change because we got here and then everything stopped. I came here most recently from Connecticut. I was there for, I think, about 11 years. Right after graduating college, I moved up there to pursue a career and then stayed there for a little while. That's where I met my husband, and then we came here together. Before that, I was born and raised in Colorado.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood days.
Sure. I grew up in Longmont, Colorado, which is about an hour north of Denver, close to Boulder. It was a pretty small town when I was born there, and it's like very suburban grown since then. So it's funny to go back to that area. It's completely different than it was when I was a kid. It was a fine place to grow up. My parents worked hard to make sure that we went to the best schools in the district. We were public schooled, which I didn't really think was a big deal until I moved away from Colorado and then learned that in areas that I was experiencing along the Gold Coast of Connecticut, private schooling is actually a very big, important piece of academia and very much an indication of success among the parents in those areas. And it was interesting to see that strong distinction between the families who were sending their children to private schools, either day schools or boarding schools, which was something that I only heard of peripherally or through movies. I didn't think that was actually a thing that happened. It was fascinating to me to see how different regionally people live, because in Colorado at the time, and I don't know, I haven't been there for a while, but we had very strong public school systems and everybody went to public school. There wasn't really an indication for private school. And then now that I'm over here on the East Coast, it actually seems like it's pretty standard to explore the private sector. And fascinating to me because I have family who work in public education and work in the school systems. And it's always been, and I remember this all growing up too, it was always an ignored area, the unsung heroes who are the teachers who are working very hard with the students all day. And it's where we send our children during the day. It's where they're cared for. It's where they learn. It's where they become adults. That it's chronically underfunded, and then coming into a new phase in my own life and starting to interact with people who were taking their own private money to better fund their own schools. And I know there's continuing discussion over proficiency testing and whether that's actually accurate or if it's giving any indication of potential success or whether it's truly learning or regurgitating. But I think that's always a question when we learn and discuss and interact with each other. Are we actually processing and learning? Are we actually coming up with our own thoughts, or are we regurgitating? Because I think it's very easy to regurgitate information. And I think that even as we consume a lot of mainstream media, as we communicate with each other, we're just throwing out statistics that we haven't figured out ourselves. Yeah, it's hard to know the truth.
It's hard to know the truth. There's a perspective of the truth, which all of us have, but what's the real truth?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there any incident which you would like to share which shaped your life?
I don't think I could identify one particular incident that shaped me. I think being a human is so much, at least in my perspective of it, is learning through everything, taking something away from everything. And there are possibly incidents that in the moment feel like they are the most all-encompassing, catastrophic or monumental moments. But and I was trying to think, is there one thing? I don't think there's one thing. Especially as I've continued to age and move into different decades of my life and different life experiences, I feel like what's truly important is to take something away from every interaction that I can, apply something somewhere else. I've always wanted there to be very strict black and white understandings of how rules and regulations work and how I can very easily categorize and understand how things are supposed to work and how the world functions best. But a lot of my life experiences have just brought me to understand that really it is a lot of fluctuation and a lot of gray area and not as easily categorized as I would like it to be. So growing and allowing myself to become more accepting of those acceptances and those exceptions, and trying to be less rigid in my compartmentalization of existence has been important. But I also feel that there are areas where I don't want to compromise my own integrity, or I feel like I have to stand up on my own principle, and having some kind of at least internal policy of this is the line that I will or will not cross. I think that's helpful. And I feel like as I continue to interact with people and as I continue to have all of my experiences, the good ones and the bad ones, if I can develop my own barriers and guidelines and set my own expectations for myself, it becomes easier to stay true to what I feel is important. And it becomes easier to make those exceptions for things that are potentially in the moment less important. And professionally, I work a lot with customer service. So I feel like that has been a strong teacher to me of those moments where things, I feel it's a hard no, but somehow I have to come around to a yes, or seems easy enough to make the exception this time, but then we're setting a precedent. So have to figure out where I will or will not cross a line. And that keeps it very professional. But I tend to be kind of an introspective, more reserved, shy person. So actually most of my human interactions are on a professional basis. So I guess that's probably my primary learning environment. But something that I also have come to realize is as I continue to move through life and get more experiences behind me, the things that at one time seemed all-encompassing start to have less of an impact on me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the idea of the wounds healing or scarring over, and then I continue to move forward, or if it's just that I start to realize I put far too much weight on something previously and it isn't what I thought it was.
What is something which is very close to your heart, or what is something you're very passionate about?
I used to have a lot of ideas of what I wanted and where I wanted to go. I used to feel like the world was just complete possibility. And that led to a lot of disappointments. And I think at some level, I moved out of the inclination to have such hopes and ambitions just to protect myself. It hurts a lot less if you're not hoping for something. That seems like a very pessimistic perspective, clearly from a very outside standpoint. But I did study yoga for a while. I was a yoga aspirant. That sounds really pretentious, but it's a continuing practice. And there's the physical part of it, getting into the body and feeling strong in myself. And then there's the spiritual element of it, which is actually even a broader perspective. And getting deeper into that brought me to some spiritual enlightenments that were very calming to me in those moments as I was realizing the likelihood of my success in ways that I originally had hoped was diminishing. The idea of becoming one with the universal God actually seems less daunting, which is hilarious. That's probably the most challenging, least possible hope that I could have. But finding peace in the fact that I am here, I exist, regardless of what I do or what I hope. I am like, this is happening at the moment. I'm on a journey, just be in it. And less of a hope that by the time I get through this journey, I need to have accomplished these things. And by the time I get to the next phase of my existence, I want to be known for something. And I'm not going to claim that I have any incredible understanding of yoga or that I am some kind of guru. Absolutely. I'm as far from that as possible. I'm still, even though I've taken teacher trainings, that's really just a completion course. That's not like an understanding of the full essence or scope of the philosophy. But I was able to take parts of that away. And for me, I currently find a lot of comfort in the idea of being here and being content in what I've been able to do. And of course, there are like little hopes throughout the day. I hope I get this project completed. I hope I'm going to work to pay off this bill or whatever, those very day-to-day things, because those happen and I can't ignore it. So I have like moderate control over my life experiences, but I don't feel that I spend as much energy concerned with a life purpose or becoming successful at what I thought I could professionally be when I was younger, because life is not about, it's so cliche, it's the journey, it's not the destination. But like, I'm on a journey, and the destination I thought I might arrive at is like nowhere nearby. So I don't know where I'm going. It's easier to experience it than to fight it.
I was thinking about it a few days back, and I shared with a friend, and she was going through something which was a little harsh. And I said, everything's going to be okay. And I thought about myself, and I said, everything is okay. I'm eating well. I have a loving dog. I have a loving family. And then it just struck me that there's a lot that has happened in my life also, but still everything is okay, and everything always ends up being okay. So that changed my perspective a little bit, that life keeps happening and we keep moving through it. We could either pause ourselves at the moment and worry about the future, or be sad about the past, or we could just be there and enjoy it and keep going.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I completely agree.
Who has been the most influential person in your life, and how have they impacted you?
The most influential, I guess my parents were always right there. And there are moments when I'm like, oh yeah, they led me in the right direction. And then there are moments when I think, oh my God, how could they have thought that was the way to raise a child? But I think that's a universal truth about anything, but particularly child rearing. I grew up with a 2-parent household and had the support when I needed them. They did everything they could to make sure that we were in good schools. They kept us fed, they kept us housed, I think. And through all of that, set expectations in my mind for what my life should be, or what I should try to achieve. In that, I think, set me on the course for having the ambition to have a career that's like a full-time job, a place where I go, a place where I earn money, owning a home, owning a car, all of those things that at various times in my life have been my goal. In some ways, I think that emphasis on that type of security maybe set me up for some failures in other ways, because I very much like having that safety net. I like to ensure that I've got a place to sleep at night. I like to ensure that I know where I'm going to be a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. I don't like any surprises. I am a very risk-averse person, which I think has also put me in a position where I'm not willing to make the attempts, because the failures are very heavy on me. And so I'm not saying it was right or wrong, and I'm not saying that my parents have made me want all the things that I have or anything, but I think it was an ingrained training of this is what success looks like. And I think I bought into that pretty well. I'm trying to think of other people who have influenced me. There are so many people. It's very much like I started out saying, I find things that I like or do not like in the interactions that I have. And that includes in the people that I meet. Try to like take something from everyone if it's good, or try to avoid something if I don't like it. It's something that's consistent around me, that at any time I'll find one person is inspiring me a little bit more and take that information. I've had yoga teachers that like made me feel very powerful, and in those moments you feel like, oh my gosh, you know how to speak to people, you know how to identify people, you know how to like help them come into their bodies, or help them feel confident in a moment where they're not feeling confident. That's really impressive. But then also, like, I've made that attempt. I was trained as a yoga teacher and then realized my limitations. So I think it's also important to have inspiration, but not necessarily something that I would emulate, which is something that I have come to realize pretty recently in my life, that just because something is awesome doesn't mean that I have to be that. And I feel like that's helped me gain some confidence, because it's okay for me to know myself, and it's okay for me to know my limitations. And other people who have strengths, they can have those strengths. And then I will find within my own strengths some way that I can be influential, or at least get through the day in a way that makes me feel okay. I've had some college professors who were like, oh yes, we're doing everything. This is going to be amazing. I studied theater in college, and this is how you creative, and this is how things are magnificent. And then breaking out into that world on my own, realizing that I was actually being led in the wrong direction, or this isn't how things are done. Or when I actually went in for the practical, how to do something to get into the industry, the professor's, oh, I don't know. I've never actually sent anyone out there into the world. So I don't know how to help you. Again, it goes back to what is the truth. It's very hard to identify what is correct now, what's always going to be correct. So I feel I'm a very guarded person also. So I tend not to trust people so much. And I think when I was a kid, I trusted everybody. I held on to that sense of innocence longer than I should have.
Yeah.
Then eventually started to realize in a way that made me feel betrayed that, oh no, I should have been thinking myself, like all these people let me down, but then realizing it's not that they let me down, it's I let me down. And so
I feel the same way.
yes, it's really traumatic to come to that conclusion of, oh no, I thought I could trust everything. No, it turns out I was not strong enough to see anything. I was playing innocent when I should have been taking charge of my own experiences and trusting my own instincts, which I think has taken me so very long to believe, first of all, that I have an instinct. Secondly, that it was trustworthy. And I don't really know how to explain that because I don't know. I guess it goes back to trusting other people. And when I would say, this is my thought, this is how I'm feeling about things, all the way from like young childhood up until pretty recently, saying, I feel this. And then someone saying, why? That's not how that is. And then I'd be like, oh gosh, I was wrong. I was making this up. So it's been a lifelong journey, of course, but learning that tiny little feeling that something is or is not is actually something to trust. I've admired people who are able to say, my gut tells me, and then I see that it comes true, or that they somehow, without being able to categorize it or put the data together, were able to see what was the most advantageous path for them. And I really suppressed my intuition for a very long time and still do. And I second guess myself all the time. And that's usually my indication. Once I second guess myself, I'm like, wait, and now I'm like letting other people get into my head. I'm trying to discourage my own thoughts. I think a lot of that also goes back into that risk aversion that I tend to have. What if I make the wrong choice? And learning that maybe it's not so much about wrong choices, it's just the choice that I believe in.
I guess there's no right or wrong. It's how we view which choice we take. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you from what you said, because I resonate with this a lot. And I ask myself sometimes about innocence, that sometimes I would like to believe that I'm smarter than I was when I was younger or when I was like a little child. And then there's another situation which might pop up and I don't know, I don't have an answer to this, but I feel like sometimes I just might act the exact same way which I did then. And I think that I'm smarter now, but I would still choose to believe. And I'm not saying that I'm the good one, but I'll still choose to believe the good situation or the good side of the person and then end up repeating the situation again.
That like it takes me back to, I also studied psychology, but also if we had someone just like me who in the parallel world went through all of the same experiences and then came to the same question, would we have the same answer just because we've been through all the same experiences, or would we actually have that independent potential to make different choices? And I'm always so impressed with the person who is brave and strong in their conviction that they will choose the thing that is not expected, or the thing that is hard, or the thing that they've been told repeatedly not to do.
Yeah.
And I can see how from like a parenting perspective, that's probably really annoying because you keep telling the kid, don't do this, and then they do it and then they experience the repercussions. But I'm also like, oh, wow, I wish so many times in my life, I wish I'd just been a little bit braver, and I wish I had tried something that wasn't expected of me. When people are on their deathbed, they don't wish they had played things safer. They wish they had tried more things. But I put myself like, as I've said, like I know myself better. I am accepting what I know about myself more. And I probably expect that if I were on my deathbed and said, oh, I wish I had one more chance to go try harder, and then miraculously was given that, I probably wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't expose myself to the potential failure that has paralyzed me from trying other things. I probably would face it the same way that I would face it today. And that's disappointing in some ways, but it's also comforting in some ways because I don't have to try so hard now. I don't have to rack my brain. I used to spend all of my days off of work trying to figure out how can I be who I wish I were. And now I can just spend my day off enjoying the day.
There's another thing which from the previous one of the answers you gave me, and I'm just, this is out of my curiosity. You mentioned about a universal God. So as someone who's from another culture who grew up not too religious, but we have a concept of an unknown God and we believe in that. And what is your take on that? Do you believe in the higher power, in the universal God and spirit?
I believe there is some greater thing that connects all of us. And I believe it's bigger than we could understand. So I grew up in a loosely Christian household, but we didn't particularly worship. We just celebrated Christmas and Easter. I was never taught the gospel or brought through Sunday schools, or I never studied the Bible and such. So I don't have religious base from which to broaden, I guess, my understanding. But like I said, I studied some yoga. I'm not going to pretend that is understanding a religion, and I'm not going to pretend I'm advanced enough in the practice to have had any epiphanies, and I have not ascended. And it's my experience of life is still very manifested in this existence on earth. But there are so many moments where I feel like there is something out there that functions independently of time and space. And I actually read a book a couple of years ago called Quantum Spirituality. It talks about religion within the framework of quantum physics, which I found to be really fascinating because a few years ago, I actually started studying crystal healing because I had an experience with a crystal that was like undeniably actually physically affected my body. And I was like, I have to understand what just happened. I am not a quantum physicist and I don't understand exactly what happened, but I know something happened. And so there's power out there that I don't understand. And within studying crystal healing, what I came to learn was actually crystals are used in like electronics to direct and regulate energy. So it actually is like a flow of energy, and we're surrounded by energy in the universe, and we can direct it and control it and use these elements of the earth to have these experiences. I think in this very scientific, electronics-based, externally motivated world that we're in right now, we forget that we are creatures of the earth. And so we, as these animals that we are, exist specific to this planet. And we likely are supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to, but can commune with other earthly things. And I think it's very easy, and I think it's probably very common that most of us are not connected to whatever that strong universal energy is. We are each of us is such a tiny little piece of something that is unimaginably large. And then to realize that that's just this dimension, and it's like bigger even beyond that. I have to imagine, I don't see any other way that we could exist if there is nothing connecting everything that exists. Yeah. And I hope one day I will get to return back to the greatness of it and maybe see like the bigger picture, because it's hard to be one little individual isolated. It's very lonely. It's very hard to exist right now. Everybody's got their way of coping with it. And some people love it and some people don't. And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong, but we're all in it, which kind of goes back to that just, I'm here. I'll just be here in this moment, make it as okay as it can be, even in the worst of times, wade through it, wait it out, and so far everything's okay. And yeah, I do hope there's something out there. I hope there is. And the way that I've come to recognize it, I don't think that it is what was originally taught to me as the Christian God. I don't think that it's an old man with a big beard who's just pointing at things from the heavens. Somebody was like, I think we'll use this imagery and we'll just make it as dumbed down as possible. But I feel like it has to be even, it's got to be bigger than that. I have to be a part of it because I exist. I have to be connected to it because I wouldn't exist if I'm not a part of it. There are really wonderful moments that remind me that something is bigger. And what comes to mind, I wanted to explore tarot. And I went online and I was looking at all the tarot decks, and something just felt really cheesy to me about it, but something was drawing me to it. And then I found a deck online that I fell in love with it. And they were sold out. But then it said there was like a thing coming back, like relaunching or whatever, or back in stock. And it was like 3 days later. And I was like, okay, I'll set my alarm and I will make sure to order this in 3 days. But it was also $90. And I was like, that's a lot of money for a tarot deck. So I was like, okay, I'll think about it for the next 3 days and then I'll do it. And at the time, my husband and I had budgeted ourselves each $50 from each paycheck to have as mad money. So I was like, okay, I have $50. All right, that's not so bad. And then the next day, I was like, I just need to find that remaining $40. And then the next day, I put on a hoodie and I reached into the pocket and there was $15 in there. And I was like, where did this even come from? Like, I had to have put this here. I'm not dumb. I had to have put this here. But I was like, oh my God, the universe knew 5 days ago when I had this $15 I wasn't supposed to have. And I put it in my pocket that I would need it now. And just like little bits at a time, I was able to like make the money and have it to go online I was such a dork about it. I like at midnight as it was finally available, went online and ordered this tarot deck. And I love it. It's been studying it, getting to know it. It talks to me. I know that sounds cheesy too, and that's all about like energy and communing with the universe in its own way. Again, I'm not an expert at it. I'm still very novice. Something out there that talks to us if we're ready to listen. And what's really unfortunate in my experience of existence is that I so frequently only see that the universe was telling me something in retrospect. And like after the event is over, I'm like, oh man, yeah, there were all these signs along the way. And some of this just might be me imparting it on a conversation from my own fears of how I am being perceived. But sometimes it does feel like they're entertaining the conversation. They're humoring me. They're allowing me to carry on as I do. And I remember an instant, I had been studying crystal healing and I found that was the best way for me to find a way to learn about it. I don't consider myself a healer, and I don't know that I trust myself to use energy to heal another person, but I found that was the avenue that I could find the most information about crystal energy. I was studying it and I took a course in it, and independently of that, the company I was working for during COVID ended up having to close, and I was unemployed for a while coming out of COVID. And it came to the point where I was like desperate for a job. Like I absolutely have to find one. And the only one that I could find was working operations for a jewelry company. But I told someone that I had taken on that job, and their response was, oh my God, that's so wonderful because you just finished your degree in gemology. And I was like, I have never studied gemology. I did not pursue a degree in it. And I cannot believe how unseen I feel in this moment. And I was also really surprised at how upset I was at their misunderstanding of what I had been talking about. Yeah, I guess that says more about me that I got so upset about it. I can't control how much anyone else is paying attention, but it does speak to that idea of it's almost who you can trust. And I don't think that's actually what I mean. I don't know if you're familiar. This is the closest affiliation or the closest I can come to defining what I'm trying to say. And this is a very roundabout way of getting to it. But I don't know if you're familiar with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. I hoped that would be a resounding yes. Yeah. Okay. And there's the part where you make a diagram and there are the people that you can be creatively safe with and the people who are not creatively safe and they fall outside of your circle. And it was one of those moments that I realized that this person was not a safe creative supporter.
Yes.
And that's so hard because it's a very vulnerable place to be when you're like trying to explore something that is not in the mainstream. No, I'm not going to earn a fantastic salary studying crystals. And so that is less important to people. But actually the most incredible experiences that I've had are more of those energetic experiences. And to know that you're right. You have to be aware who you're talking to and decide whether it is important to you that they feel or that they understand the impact that the topic has on you. Yes. In that conversation. But also, everyone's allowed to feel however they want to feel about something. And there are experiences where I've listened to people talk about something that I just don't understand. I don't get it. I don't believe in it, but it's their right to keep talking. And if I'm going to feel that way about it, I also have to allow someone else to have to listen to me talking about something that they don't agree with, they don't believe in, they don't, whatever. And it's okay for my conversations, my topics to not interest them. But to that point, it can feel unsafe. And so it's nicer to have those wonderful conversations about less typical things with people who are very supportive and understanding of it.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that.
It's a very lonely place to be. That's something that I deal with very consistently, that I would like to feel better sharing those vulnerable elements of myself. But in my experiences, more often than not, I do get burned in some capacity every time I open that up. And again, I tend to be a very guarded person. There's so much at stake in sharing those moments that I will minimize as I'm talking to someone. I will minimize to what extent I find something important.
Yeah.
And then even if it is a really wonderful, marvelous conversation in my head, because I'm always in my head, there's always that voice coming back to me, telling me that I am not meeting the expectation. I will imagine that the person was just being really nice. And so it's, regardless of how good the conversation will go, I am my worst enemy. And I think that's a hard place to be too. And I know I'm not alone in that experience. I know people talk about that all the time. But I wish there was a way to just feel really okay about everything.
Yeah.
And maybe there is, and I hope that some people have figured out how to be that. And I hope I find a way to be that. But it does feel really impossible to just feel universally accepted. And if not, who cares? Because I think we all care at some level. Makes it really hard to find our own truths or to live by them or to show them to other people.
Thank you. It was so wonderful to talk to you about. What do you feel the purpose of life is for you? Or in other words, what do you feel is your personal quest in life?
I don't feel like I have a life purpose. There's a part of me that feels very defeated saying that. There's also a part of me that the question exists because we're told we should have one. I think there are people out there who've totally got their goal and they have achieved it and they're doing wonderful things according to their standards or their expectations. I used to have more specific goals for myself. I never figured out how to pursue them. I know that sounds really absurd. In things that I've found success, I feel like somehow something clicked. I understood the path and I understood what it took to get there. And I saw the A, B, C, and D of the process. And then in the things that I haven't been able to pursue, something just didn't make sense, or I started to take what I thought was the path and then was told, no, this isn't the one for you, though. Again, it goes back to me requiring a really strong foundation and safety net. And like, I'm not comfortable reaching outside of certain parameters. And I think that makes it harder to explore less definitive ambitions. I really wish that I had strong, big dreams of becoming like an accountant or something. Like that's really solid, really useful, really like helpful, a very definitive expectation of here's how you learn it, here's how you get there, and everyone wants to hire you. And that's a very capitalist wish as well. Yeah, I wish I found it really easy to put in a hard day's work and make a hard day's pay and go home and enjoy it. And to some extent, I think I've found that in just the fact that I have a job, I go there, I work as hard as I can, and then I come home and relax as hard as I can. And I think actually that's probably where I am right now in my idea of what my life goal is. I want to go be valuable where I can be. I'm introverted, so I'm super happy to spend my alone time at home. That can lead to some really boring conversations because people will be like, oh my God, what do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies? And my hobby is I sit on the sofa with my dog. Yes. And that's not, it's really hard to survive. And that's always been the truth. Like you have to be willing to commit so much to proving your value to the day. And you want to own something, you have to pay for it. You have to get there however you want to. But there's also right now, we live in a type of world where social media is giving people the opportunity to put forward only the best of the best experiences and potentials. So if I fall into the belief that I'm supposed to be these things, I'm supposed to have a full career. In addition to that, I'm supposed to have a big hobby outside of work. I'm supposed to have a side hustle. I'm supposed to also be like raising children and maybe have my own farm and or garden. And maybe I'm supposed to also be teaching people some kind of fantastic craft. And I find it very exhausting just to go to work and come home. That probably just says something about my energy level and what I'm willing to give and what I'm willing to be. But I'm okay at this point in my life, giving it my all at work and then coming home and doing as little as possible. And it doesn't make for exciting stories, but I don't need them.
I think the story is exciting. If someone asked me what mine is, it's nothing like I don't want to be a millionaire or I don't want to be the best artist in the world or things like that. I just want to be at peace with myself. And that's the only quest I have in my life. So I completely get it. And that's the stories I'm trying to connect to and have people connect to, is your inner story of feelings.
I'm really intrigued by the way that you've answered that question yourself, and that your life ambition right now is to be at peace with yourself. And I think that's beautiful. And that's the strongest place that a person can be. And then, of course, in that moment, I was relating it back to myself. And I had this thought that I'm never going to be at peace with myself. I eventually one day decided that I accept that. Your hope is to be at peace with yourself. And my experience is almost like in defiance. One day I realized I'm never going to be happy with myself. So I'm not even going to try. And in a way, that's also like finding peace with it. I'm not going to knock myself out over this anymore because it's exhausting. I'll just go ahead and be here. A few years ago, spent a lot of energy I was going through some very deep depression, and I hired a life coach who told me that I was too depressed to pursue anything. So I really needed therapy. And then I went to therapy where they were like, you're in a holding pattern, so just wait it out. And then they put me on some meds that like made me sleep for hours throughout the day. And I had to come off of the meds. And then they were like, you're just not trying. And I was like, I don't understand. I thought what I needed was to like try to find a place for myself. And I reached out for all the help and couldn't find it and spent so much money on it. And then eventually I was just like, you know what? I guess if the answer is that there's no help for you, there's actually a release in that just, well, screw it. I will just go ahead and be here. It sounds very depressing to say, but hope is the worst invention of God, the cruelest invention of God. If you keep hoping, there's just this anticipation that the future might be better. And in some ways, that's a really good motivator. But if all I'm doing is hoping that the future is better, the now is never good.
It reminds me of, talking of peace, it reminds me my father has this quote which he keeps telling me all the time when I talk to him about peace. He says about Buddha, the great teacher, he says that he always said that there is suffering in this world, but my suffering has ended. He's always, over the course of my life, he's been repeating that to me. And I meditate on that one fact a lot, that there's always going to be suffering. It's mine, which is the one which I'm, say, at peace with, hypothetically speaking. So I try to learn a lot from that one.
That's a really beautiful perspective. There's so much expectation and so much pressure to prove ourselves that it's really hard to be at peace.
Yes.
And so if peace can be found, it's all on us, and we can only do that within our own minds.
Yeah, it does not exist outside of us.
Yeah.
Is there any book, quote, or philosophy that has shaped your outlook on life?
Quantum Spirituality by Peter Canova, Science, Gnostic Mysticism, and Connections with Source Consciousness. I read this a couple of years ago. It really resonated with me for many reasons. It does have a lot of conversation with early Christianity, which is very different from current Christianity as well. So I don't want to pretend like there's no organized religion discussed in the book, but it has a scientific perspective that also very truly tied into what I was learning in yoga and connecting to that universal God. So I think that one is probably one that most recently in my very short list of novels or books, this is probably the most interesting one that I have read currently. The Body Keeps the Score was a really, really good one. Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Myss, I really, really enjoyed. And that one was putting the chakras into perspective with, I believe it's actually been a while since I read it, but I think what she was doing for at least part of it, she was putting the chakras in perspective with Christian rites and the tree of life. So kind of finding the parallels between those different systems of like processing energy through the body and through religion. I thought it was very interesting.
If it were a perfect world, what does that look like in your eyes?
Perfect for me, I would just be able to do whatever I wanted to do anytime, anywhere with no repercussions and just like enjoy anything. Weirdly, as many challenges as we have, part of me would always also say that this kind of is a perfect world and that we have multiple perspectives and we have opportunities to express them and discuss them and attempt to work together. We have a huge amount of disrespect for each other. And so I think that is highly imperfect. So maybe in a more perfect world, we would respect each other. There's beauty to be found in imperfection.
What is something you would like the world to know about you, which you feel is often misunderstood?
My family, it even came up in an annual review once that at work that I don't interact with people enough, that I don't make the extra efforts to be like super friendly and super chummy. And I think it's just because I'm very introverted and this is going to sound stupid. Like it doesn't occur to me to hang out with people. Other people will be like, oh yeah, I went out with 4 different people last night. And then afterwards I like went and did something else. Like it doesn't occur to me that I should be doing something else. I'm very content to just sit by myself. It's not that I'm trying to like lose friendships or interactions or connections. I just don't like I don't put in huge amounts of effort to like keep long distance relationships active. So I don't call home enough. I don't call my sisters enough. Apparently, I don't call my coworkers to chat enough. So I think it's interpreted as I'm trying to blow people off. I think that is how it is interpreted, that people think I'm trying to break connections. But for me, it's truly just, I don't know, if we have something to talk about, we'll talk about it. And if we don't, then that's okay. There was a cool store on 14th Street Northwest here in DC called The Outrage, and they had a postcard, and it was like these two people on opposite corners of the card. It said, "She's one of my best friends, but we haven't talked in years." And then they crossed out "but" and put, and I was like, no, yeah, exactly. Yes. She's one of my best friends and we haven't talked in a while. It's not that we're not best friends anymore. And I liked that card for a lot of reasons. First of all, it was like, yes, exactly. It's not that I just don't talk to people and now we're not friends. But also I thought it was a really strong indication of how strong language is and how that will change the meaning of something.
From your entire journey in life so far, what would you like to share with our listeners, which you feel would be helpful to them?
I started my way on the journey to take things less personally and to take things less seriously. And that feels a little bit better. I don't have a life hack that makes it all better. I think every day is a day that we get to experience and have to experience. And there's always a pro, there's always a con. Sometimes it's the same thing. I tend to be a very pessimistic person, so I'm always prepared for something to disappoint me. And that's a hard position to be in, but it also helps me when the time comes because I saw it coming.
Thank you so much for this talk, Ammie. This was very insightful and wonderful and very enjoyable.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first ever guest appearance on a podcast. So I hope I was able to provide something interesting for you. And I really enjoyed talking. You got me thinking about a lot of things.
To know more about what I do and offer, visit my website, samroshni.com, or find me on Instagram at samroshni coaching. Thank you.